Hello everybody and welcome to my Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York review. This is a different review than I normally do on my channel. I normally do reviews in 5 minutes or less that are a lot more scripted, so this one might actually end up with me rambling. I am very sorry about that. It's just that because this is a visual novel, and I do read visual novels, I just normally don't review them on my channel. Because this is a visual novel, a lot of what I'm gonna be covering will be the plot and the subplots and the little submissions that you can do. And I feel like I'm gonna need to go a bit more in depth than 5 minutes would let me. So this is more of a unscripted ramble sort of review. If this is not your thing, I am very sorry about that. When I will start going into the main plot line and discussing it in depth, I will tell you before I do that, so I will tell you to switch off if you don't want to hear spoilers. This is gonna start out with me giving you a short review, and then I'm gonna be expanding specifically on the story side because everything else can be summed up in the short review without actually giving you that much spoilers. So let's start from what I think about the overall story, as this is a visual novel, meaning that the game is majority just story-based. It's a lot of reading. There's no voice acting in it. You just sit down, you read it. There are choices, there are things that you can do, but outside of 2 points at the start, you really can't die. So you can't really mess up. It's kind of impossible to mess up. It's all about the little things that you might want to pick up on or not pick up on. If you select this dialogue option, you might get this amount of information that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten, and you can do these quests instead of these quests, that sort of thing, because there's not enough time in the game to do it all in one sitting. But that is like the extent of how much your playthrough will differ one from another. It's mostly just, outside of a few places at the start, it's mostly just sit down and read through it all. If I was to just give you a little overview of the story, I feel like it is fine, outside of a few points where the writing might have gone a bit goofy, or a few things that I disagree about, which is, I'm gonna be expanding it upon it in the ranting session. I think that the story was actually enjoyable. I did not expect this to be an enjoyable read. I expected this visual novel to actually disappoint me. I don't know why. It's just, I didn't hear very good things about it. So I thought, oh, it's gonna be disappointing. So I just set it out to do it as a bit of fun on my Twitch, and I was doing it while drunk, and I actually got really into it. I got really into it because outside of a few places where the writing goes a bit goofy, and a few places where the writing will actually ignore your choices because they just didn't write in a segue, outside of that, the writing was very enjoyable to read, and yeah, just for the story alone, I would actually recommend it. It's a nice read. It is a nice read. Now, what kind of complaints did I have with this game? Well, remember, this is not my first visual novel, right? And there are things that I've gotten used to having in visual novels, and the fact that this one doesn't, and the fact that the authors didn't think about it, kind of worries me, because visual novels don't actually have a lot of stuff. No way to replay parts of an encounter. You must start the game from fresh. You can't save and load at will. So all of your choices are locked in, which is fine, except the fact that it took me like 10 hours to read it through the first time, and if I would go the second time, obviously it's a lot faster, as I just click through what I have already written, what I have already read, but there is absolutely no way for me to just like replay a single encounter, for example. So I would need to replay the whole game if I just wanted to select differently in a single encounter, which is, as somebody that just wants to read visual novels, that is actually, I understand role-playing perspective, but it's kind of like not giving a person a way to save inside a video game. Yeah, it makes the video game more hardcore because you're gonna be reloading on checkpoints, but at the same time, it it hinders the player experience. This is that sort of thing. It locks in your choices, that is hardcore, but it kind of hinders your player experience, especially when you just want to replay and you want to reread a segment with a specific character, and you just want to do that. Which segues into my next bit, which is no way to look at a previous slide. I read this 3 times now. I did it once for every character that's available. And I did it twice on Twitch and once on my own. And you're just skipping through because you have already read things, but then you want to like check something that you skipped in order to select like a right answer to that, because you actually forgot what you just skipped and forgot what you just looked at. Or you accidentally double clicked and the slide skipped. There's like no way for me to slide back that at least I know about. And that is quite irritating considering this is a visual novel and it's all about reading. So if I was just trying to skip through a lot of the stuff that I have already seen 3 times really fast, but then I was like, wait a minute, that's something caught my eye. I can't just like go back to it and read it again. And then there's no way to auto skip till choices, which once again makes it very, very hard to replay this game when you have already seen absolutely everything outside of like what specific options do. So if I want to investigate a specific option on a specific character, I have to kill my mouse by going clickety clickety clickety. And that's just, it's not good for my mouse health. Like there's one achievement that I haven't achieved. I have 26 hours on this game currently. And that achievement involves not having anyone in your coterie, right? But in order for me to do this, I would need to replay the game for the 4th time. And because by now I practically have seen absolutely everything except tiny, teeny, minute details and some quests, I would literally have to kill my mouse. And I don't want to do that. And for God's sakes, people, this is like failing at all the checkpoints of a visual novel. Okay? Now, another thing, no handy in-game gallery for unlocked backgrounds and/or characters. I have been using some pictures, right, for my other talking points, like of characters and stuff. I can't take it out of the game because the game doesn't have an option like that. Other games do. Other games, when you unlock backgrounds and you unlock like characters, you will like have this nice big gallery button somewhere on the main menu where you can like access their specific pictures. And in a lot of visual novels it's like romance related, like, you know, romance good outcome, romance bad outcome, that sort of thing. But each character will have a freeze frame of sorts, and this game has such beautiful art. It does. I mean, just look at this background. It has such beautiful art, yet I have no way of just going and staring at said art, despite the fact that I have the video game product, which does really annoy me considering that once again, this is like visual novel 1-on-1. I am not reviewing you as I would a normal game. I'm reviewing you as a visual novel right now, game. And you're failing every visual novel 1-on-1 points. I don't know how, but you're just managing to fail it. Now, the last complaint is that the game is very railroady. You can fail twice at the start in one particular point. It's literally 3 dialogue options, 1 is the right one, and 2 will lead you to the secret failure endings that will give you achievements. And that is like very, very early on. And everything else, no matter what you choose, is just kind of a straight line. It is not entirely straight, because once again, as I said, you select different choices, you get different bits of dialogue and different bits of information. So the second time when I was playing it through, it was actually still enjoyable because I was like, oh, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. Plus, you can't recruit everybody at the same game, so you have to do a second playthrough just to see all of the possible quests and side quests, in case you want to finish all of them at least once. So there is still something for you in the second playthrough, but there's one ending, and the one ending wouldn't be that bad, but even the choices inside the game itself are minimal, and sometimes they segue really badly. I'll give you an example. This is main story. It's like quite a bit into the main story, and I have to find this Nosferatu, right? And I can choose to go search for him, or I can choose to go and get myself a snack. A person, because feeding is a mechanic in this game. So I go, you know what, I'm gonna go and get myself a snack. This was my third playthrough. I did the searchy bits before, I've seen the dialogue before, I'm gonna just go and get myself a snack. And well, I do that, and the snack ended up having a bit of drugs in it, so my character ends up staring at the sky for 15 minutes until Nosferatu's ghoul finds me and goes, "Stay right here, my boss is coming, and he's gonna be very angry at you for hunting on his grounds." And I was like, okay, I haven't seen this one before, and when I do get to the boss, he acts as if I have found him without actually hunting on his grounds. It's like they actually forgot to put in a segue for that choice, because most of the choices, you will just get like an extra bit of dialogue that just segues into how the game is supposed to go. At this point, they didn't even segue. You can like see that sort of things here and there. There are a few options that I found that are major, but even they segue into things pretty awkwardly, if you ask me, where if something major was supposed to happen and you avoided it, the only difference in the story is that that major thing will be missing. Okay? It continues like the major thing has happened, except you haven't seen the major thing, and the further slides are fairly vague, so you just... It's like if a character was gonna get upset either way, you either saw the major thing or you didn't, but they still got upset, that sort of thing. So you're like, oh, I found an actual choice that does an actual thing, but it just awkwardly segues into where the story was gonna go. Anyway, it is very, very much on railroads, and considering that you're already writing visual novel, I would expect you to do a bit better at that. And that, another thing, why don't I have a big button to either rest my nights away, because you do get a big button that says rest on like your screen on the main menu when you're selecting on things to do for that night. You have the big button that says rest, but that's after you already have expended all the moves for the night. Or a button that says feed, because sometimes I just need to waste time. I have already seen the missions. I just need to waste time, and I need to see what happens at the end in a specific mission. I don't care about anything else. Main story will still be forcing me to progress either way. Plus, with some mission selections, you just do not have the option to feed, which only results in you losing your self-control either way. It doesn't actually impact that much in the game. But I would have gladly taken a night out to just go and hunt and feed, instead of going and talking with my companions on an empty stomach and risking losing my temper. You know, that sort of thing. If you're including that mechanic, why don't you just let me waste turns by selecting to go and feed on the main menu screen? Why can't I just do that? And that would be my long list of complaints. Which, once again, you would think that it would make the game pretty bad. But no, they don't. No, actually they don't. The game, primary thing that you're gonna be judging a visual novel on is the story. And the story's pretty good. The soundtrack, as you can hear, is pretty awesome. It's not Rick Schlaffer level of awesome. It's not something that I will carry around even. It's not something that I'm gonna be remembering. But for the sound in the background, it sounds pleasing. It works. It's good enough. So that is a plus. Another plus is that there's enough things to learn for a second playthrough to be worth it. Legitimately, you will either do 2 members of your coterie, full quests, and like side quests, or you're gonna do all 4 members possible of the coterie and you will skip all the side quests, which means that in a single playthrough you can see about half the possible content. The ending will still be the same, the main story will still be the same, but you saw about half the possible writing that there is. So you can see the other half in the second playthrough and then tiny teeny tidbits in the third playthrough. If I went for a 4th playthrough, there would probably still be a tiny few sentences here and there, but as I said, that would just really kill my mouse, so I don't wanna. Another plus is length. This game is... It took me over 10 hours. I read it out loud. So you can do it faster than that, but single playthrough took me over 10 hours. Doing 3 playthroughs, 2 on Twitch and 1 for myself. It took me 26 hours and I got 27 out of 28 achievements. If I look, yep, 27 out of 28. So I've gotten 26 hours out of a single visual novel. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. And once again, the art is absolutely outstanding. I like the art more than I like the music. One sentence at the start of one of the characters surprised me so much that I was like, you know what, this is a beautiful scene. I am just gonna print screen, I'm gonna set it as my desktop, and it's still my desktop right now. That's how pretty the art is. Overall, if you account for every minus that I just told you, I would give this game an 8 out of 10. Because once again, the story's pretty alright, and I've gotten 26 hours out of it. For a visual novel, that is going way and above my expectations. That is absolutely incredible, considering that I expected it to be almost no choice whatsoever, because I've heard the lack of choice mentioned as a bad thing, and I'm mentioning it to you as well. Just the fact that I had 2 playthroughs that were completely different outside of the main storyline, and a third playthrough where I could still pick tidbits that are new to me, that is to me quite amazing, if you ask me. For a visual novel, 3 playthroughs, very amazing. That being said, only 4% of all people come for 3 playthroughs, because you get an achievement if you do all the playthroughs, and majority of people didn't. Now, another thing that some people are not gonna like is that the 3 main characters are preset. I understand why they did it like that, because each one of them come with their own background, and that is quite important. But because there's 1 girl and 2 dudes, some people are like really upset about it, going, you know, their genders are just set in stone and you can't change that. So if it's something that will upset you, keep that in mind. It didn't upset me because each character is unique and each character has unique tiny bit of backstory. So I give this game 8 out of 10. This is where I'm gonna end my non-in-depth rant. If you don't want spoilers, switch off this review right now. Thank you for watching, and I hope I will get to see you on my other videos. If you have now stayed, then any spoilers that you're gonna hear, you can only blame yourself for because we're now gonna be going into main storyline discussion point by point. So I have player character and plots, I have main story. For main story, I'm gonna be discussing main characters such as Sophie, CALLIHAN, Thomas Arturo, Quadir, and Torque. And then I'm gonna be discussing all companions in a row as well. Agathon, Giovanni D'Angelo, Robert Larson, as part of Giovanni D'Angelo's storyline, Tamika, and Hope. And I'm also gonna be discussing minor storyline of Benoit Segal. There are other 2 minor storylines that I am not gonna be engaging with, and I'm not gonna be discussing, mostly because they were quite interesting, but I don't really feel like I have a lot to say about them. They were just they got kind of a little bit of fun on the side. So, from all of that list, let's start from discussing main characters. We have a Bruja, we have a Ventru, and we have a Toreador, and it goes Bruja, Ventru, and Toreador. I am not gonna be remembering their names, Because for one thing, the main character can be renamed, whatever the player wants them to be named, and I named my Venture Corp, for example, just for fun. And for another thing, it's because I am pretty bad with names, and I didn't write them down, so it's best if I just refer to them by their clan names, no matter how dehumanizing that might be. Let's start from Bruja. Bruja goes to a dance club after a really bad breakup. He has been with his girlfriend for like 2 years, and then they broke up, and he is really upset. He has a normal job and everything, but he's very upset. He goes to a club, and he meets a woman, and this woman talks to him about politics, and he gets really, really passionate about it, and she takes him to a city hotel. She embraces him, and he says that he remembers the taste, like fire and ash on his tongue, making me think that Bruja blood tastes like cigarette. Ew! And she leaves. If you know the main storyline, our main bad guy has recruited your sire in order to embrace you and to leave. They specifically pulled in some favors just to get you embraced in order to plant you in front of one of the major characters and major plot lines that they're developing in order to effectively spy on them and to use you in the worst possible moment without you knowing. Effectively, it is a chess game inside a chess game, except you're a pawn. You're a pawn of a pawn. You don't impact much of what is happening in the main meta plot. So, your embrace is kinda rigged in either one of these scenarios, and no matter who embraces you, a person from your past shows up, and from the Bruja, it was his ex-girlfriend, and it was written in a very funny way, because you can discuss inside of your mind what you're gonna do. Are you gonna, like, reject her? If she wants to get back together with her, would you like to turn her into a vampire, and that sort of thing? And you can have, like, a big inner monologue with yourself in, like, those two options, because there's two places where you can, like, select what you're gonna do, and each of those selections have, like, 3 different choices, and then you meet her, and she goes, "You asshole, I thought you committed suicide. I am gonna call off the search for you, but please don't talk with me ever again." And she just, like, walks off, and you didn't even have a chance to say absolutely anything, which I think was actually kind of perfect. This guy's storyline, I actually really enjoyed. I felt like it was kind of perfect because it's all about that interpersonal horror, right? And you're discussing with yourself what you're gonna be doing about the situation, and the situation comes, and you can't actually do anything. You can't do absolutely anything, which it's just, mwah. I liked the Bruja. I like the Bruja, dude. Who you are doesn't actually change much of what happens in the main storyline. Even the rant that CALLIHAN gives, which I'm gonna get to, is quite the same. Therefore, the big thing is just your backstory. Let's go to the Ventru chick, right? So she is staying back at the office. She's bitter as all shit because her boss told her to meet a very special man. So she sits there at the office going, "This company has swallowed the best years of my life. I used to have a boyfriend, and now I don't have a boyfriend because I was working all the time and I was never home taking care of him or talking with him. And it is all my company's fault." I'm really exaggerating, but effectively, this is her monologue. Effectively, this is what her character is about. And then she goes to the meeting, and the meeting is with a vampire, and she doesn't know. And he asks what would she do if the company was given to her, and she's like, "I'm gonna give him the corporate spiel." And if you read what she was actually, thinking, like, what she's thinking makes sense, but what she's saying just sounds like corporate speak. Like the most generic corporate speak. Like, effectively, it's like, you know, when a streamer comes out and you're like, okay, how do you get big on streaming? And they go, you network. That is the kind of corporate speak that she gave. Like, I would get good connections and I would invest in advertisement and we would get a product out. That sort of thing. It's like basic. And her sire was like, yeah, you seem like a smart cookie, that will do, and embraces her. And you're just all like, wait, what? That was like that's the most basic corporate speak anyone can give. I can give you a basic pitch as well. Like, I could stand up and give you words that don't mean anything. That is effectively what she delivered. So the fact that the person embracing her didn't have high expectations, did he? I mean, he pulled in... A different character pulled in a favor, so you could probably have been talking about unicorns, and he would still be like, yep, that makes perfect sense. You will do good as a Ventru, Mrs. Unicorn. Effectively. Effectively. I don't think that he actually had a choice. So, I suppose that is why you got embraced. Another thing that was mentioned was the fact that it felt like, a really good sexual experience, so she just thought that her drink was spiked and she was raped. But she compares it to the last time when she did have a good sexual experience, and it was in secret with HR during like a company holiday, and you're like, woman, you were playing so dirty. And then she complains. Then in her company everybody's like playing dirty to go ahead, and it's like, you were sleeping with HR. You know the one thing that you're not supposed to do? Yeah, you were sleeping with HR. I wonder what in exchange for. Like, was the HR just hiding all of the things that you would normally do? That's why, is that why you slept with the HR? Because I feel like that's why you slept with the HR. And her storyline is that her former boss throws a lot of bad shit that happened in the company on her because she disappeared. And now with Bruja, it actually made sense because apparently Quadir and the Vampiric Society started a rumor that he has committed suicide, which is, yep, that would make sense. He had a bad breakup, everybody knew that he was upset, and now he's dead. He's dead. They organized his disappearance, which is good. With her, she just bloop, and she's gone. So, of course she was gonna be searched for. The hell, game. That is not... You don't just have a person go missing like that. You have to give some sort of explanation as to why they have gotten missing, okay? You can't just expect that no search will take place if they just don't show up to their work one day. That's silly. But effectively, when she disappeared, her boss decided to put a lot of dirt of what was happening in the company directly on her. She's missing, she's a convenient target. So you have to go back and clear up your name, because otherwise the police is searching for you, and that's kind of problematic for the Vampiric Society. So effectively you beat the shit out of your former boss. But the fight also makes very little sense, to a point where I was trying to make sense as to whose legs were going and whether we were sitting, lying, or standing down. And at points I was just all like, nope, this figure of human arms and legs intertwined make absolutely no sense. It would have been good if there was accompanying art right there and then to explain to me what was happening, or if the writing style was written in a way that made a lot more sense. Now, this is the Toreador, and I once again really liked the Toreador story. He took out a loan to put his work in a gallery, and it's not going very well, and he's being kind of suicidal. And then a guy comes in and he buys his painting, and this is a very beautiful man. And yes, I mean beautiful and not handsome, because, well, he doesn't necessarily look just masculine. I was attracted to him too, and so was our Toreador here. We were all attracted to the Toreador, sire. But effectively, he comes in, he buys the painting, and he goes to speak with the guy in private, and they like leave, and they leave to like this haven, and he ends up talking his soul out to this Toreador to a point where he's crying on his shoulder, and then he gets embraced, which was very sweet. And even his sire, when he leaves, he says something like, you know, I hope that we see each other again, or something like that, but like he actually gave like a full sentence. And your character's like legitimately upset that their sire left and everything, and you're like, oh, my heart. And his special someone was his sister. And his sister pulled every connection looking for you, because once again, for some reason, the vampiric society thought that you could just blip and disappear and nobody will search for you, which once again makes absolutely no sense, at least with the Bruja. At least with the Bruja, they actually said, oh, the guy died. Which is something that you should do. And you meet with the sister, and this is the poorest possible interaction with somebody from your past, right? Because she's like, oh my god, you were missing, I didn't know where you were. And she gives you a hug, and she's like, you're really cold. And you look at her, and you go, I love you! And then run. Sprint to the elevator, hit the button, descend down, run out, and drive away. And it's like all the things that we couldn't have said to each other. It wouldn't work to call off the search there, okay? That's like the most awkward interaction possible and the dumbest interaction. My husband even suggested, how about going to your sister, destroy my hard drives, the FBI is after me, I can't tell you why, I'm gonna lay low for a while, I really love you and I will miss you. See you one day, hopefully. And then you can walk off. No, he was just like, I love you! And he just sprinted, and he left her there, and she was so confused. And everyone would be very confused. I suppose it's human to make that kind of mistake, but that did not provide your character any closure, that did not provide his sister any closure, and that did not make Vampiric Society's job of keeping your sister from looking for you again any easier. So the fumble was interesting to look at, but not the best execution. If you want my recommendation, just go with the Bruja dude, because he makes the most sense. He makes the most sense and has the least goofy writing. I liked the Bruja dude. Moving on to the main story, let's start from the character that I liked, Sophie Langley. It's funny because Sophie Langley is the person that takes you in after being coerced in taking you in, but she didn't think that she was coerced into taking you in because she's too full of herself. Sophie Langley is a good way of writing a villain where people will fight whether or not she was a villain, meaning that she is a vampire that was written successfully, because remember, you shouldn't trust anybody in the Kindred Society. All Kindred lie, and all Kindred are manipulative, power-hungry bastards. She takes you in. So technically she shows you... Technically she helps you. But go against her at any point in the dialogue. Go, you know, oh, must I do this? Or take somebody else's side, and she will immediately go after you. She will slap you, she will be like, how dare you? Isn't it enough, everything that I did for you? She never listens to you. You're not really a person for her, you are a pawn, and you feel like a pawn. And she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself that she doesn't listen to anybody at any point. She doesn't execute a single thing the way that she was asked to execute a single thing in the game either. She breaks all the asks of her. She's manipulative, she is greedy. The reason why that whole meta plot is happening is because she's manipulative and she is greedy, and she doesn't care that what she would achieve would eventually end up with a lot more deaths in the Kindred society than currently are happening, because currently Kindred are preserving a status quo, and she uncovered some dirt on other Kindred, and she doesn't like that status quo is being preserved, and she's like, we can take these people out, and we can be new princes and barons, and we can break the status quo and have like a proper scuffle and lose like a lot of members to that scuffle. Effectively, she didn't have a good idea. She was being greedy, she was being power hungry, and she only took you in because she thought that you could be a worthwhile pawn. She is so full of herself, but she's also charming and elegant, and she does show you mercy at the start of the game by taking you in. And she does give you a place to stay in, so you can argue whether or not she is a bad person. I would say that she is a bad person, but that makes her a good character. In main storyline, Sophie is actually a strong suit. Sophie is actually a strong point, which we're now moving into the storyline's weak point. CALLIHAN. CALLIHAN has had maybe 3 slides. Maybe 3 slides, okay? CALLIHAN is like the Anarch Baron, and he is blood bonded to the Camarilla Prince, and that is what Sophie is so unhappy about. But effectively, in that 3 slides, the writers really wanted you to hate him. So, he takes you for a meeting, he threatens you, he beats you up, and he sends you back home. But in one of those slides, it's not the fact that he beat you up, that's the issue. The issue is that he is a 200-year-old vampire. That, you know how one guy is black, one guy is Asian, and there's a woman. That is what he hates. He hates minorities, and he's a racist and a sexist. So no matter who you're gonna pick, he's either gonna be like, you know, you Asian scum, or you ebony skin scum, or you woman. None of you belong in this society, and it was better in my times. And this is where I really, really needed to rant about this, because it makes absolutely no friggin' sense for a 200-year-old Kindred to have these prejudices. People go, oh, if you read his backstory, it's not in the game, by the way, it's actual backstory, because these characters, I give props for people writing the game. They actually use the characters that are present in World of Darkness. They didn't like make all of them up. Some of them have pretty rich backstories. CALLIHAN was embraced as a Ventrue anti-tribute into the Sabbat, and he couldn't climb the ranks because he wasn't a La Sombra, he was a Ventrue anti-tribute, so he joined Anarchs when he could, and he climbed the ranks there. Now, I have seen people on Discord argue, oh, he's sexist and racist because he's Sabbat, but that once again makes absolutely no sense. Because, hear me out, you are a corpse. You are an asexual corpse. Attraction is a thing, but that's about where it stops. Attraction is a thing. You can be drinking blood from potatoes, for all you care. Mortals do not matter. Answer me this: when you eat meat from a cow, do you care what color the cow was, how fat the cow was, or even what the sex of the cow was? No, you care about whether or not the steak is tasty. Even your character states this at some point in the story, that he goes, oh, the person that I drank from, well, he didn't look good, but I was staring at his neck, and anyone, if you stare at their neck for long enough, will look good, because all of them have nice blood pumping through their veins that are really delicious. So you wouldn't care about mortals whatsoever. Furthermore, in the Sabbat, carrying things that belong to mortals, such as prejudices, would be seen as too human. It would be an embarrassing thing. And plus, where would you use these prejudices? Imagine if your pact priest is a black woman or something. Well, she's a corpse and you're a corpse. You no longer really have a sex or a color. If you look at Dismitzi, if you look at Old Dracul, bride is just a title that they give to their lover. That they blood bond to be their lover. And if you look at the Diaries of Beckett, he nearly becomes a Count's bride. Because once again, Count took a fancy to him because it's just a corpse. Kinda interested in what's in that person's mind. You can be attracted to their physical appearance, but you're corpses. You're not people anymore. You're not running in that society. And in a Sabbat, it would twice not make any sense. Will twice not make any sense because if your superior was a minority, well, first of all, they wouldn't care, it's just the flesh that they wear. Secondly, if you did care, they would think that you're a clown. They would be like, what's with this human side of you? What's wrong with you? We're vampires. Well, why are you clowning in front of me? Off with your head, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, Camarilla have a princess and just princess. There's no female title, it's just prince. Kinda sounds like that pop artist, eh? But a woman or a man can carry the title prince because once again, you're a corpse. You are just wearing a flesh bag. I mean, for God's sakes, this means the antediluvian is sewer sludge. He has legitimately become one with the earth, and apparently whoever saw him the last time recounted talking to sewer sludge that was threatening to devour them whole. It's not even a body anymore at that point. Some of them like to shape others into furniture. Others are half demons. You are so aware that you're walking around as a corpse and not as a person anymore, and your fledgling struggles to come to this realization. So, once again, I feel like they could say Heil, very famous World War II figure, and also exclaim that CALLIHAN is a German National Socialist, you know, that sort of thing. Because they were just trying to stereotype him into villain so much, and that's why it really doesn't work for me. Because it's like the game is like, hate that character, and it's like, well, you have made me hate that character in 3 slides, but I'd rather that character had sides and was better developed, and that's why I hated him, than if that character had, like, a single side to them, which is CALLIHAN. CALLIHAN is written as, like, a single-sided, just like a black character, just like, evil, 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 evil. And it really doesn't do it for me. Moving on. Thomas Arturo. I actually had trouble finding pictures for characters once again. That whole gallery thing, you know. Some people will dislike because it's Thomas Arturo that's playing the game behind the scenes, that's controlling all the characters. And to me, it made sense, because people are like, well, he has Sophie in his pocket. Why would he get rid of his own pawn? Well, let me explain this to you. He could see that Sophie was making moves and that she wanted to usurp power. He could also see that Sophie usurping power would destabilize the status quo that is allowing him to enjoy his afterlife in peace and quiet while he pulls strings from the back, from behind the current prince. So he planted a fledgling in front of the Sophie, and he probably didn't expect to use the fledgling so fast, but he got to use the fledgling at the end anyway. And he even yelled at Sophie going, "You dumb bitch, I was playing the game from behind the scenes, and you didn't even notice, and what you were gonna do was gonna cost a lot of lives, so you gotta die now." And a lot of people go, oh, you know, oh, this is from absolutely nowhere, it makes absolutely no sense. No, it makes perfect sense. I can understand his character. I think he makes for a good character. And yes, you never hear him say anything sinister or anything like that, but that makes absolutely perfect sense. As a Kindred, you would play that angle. You wouldn't show your plan until your plan was actually executed. So he is a very well-written character, and a lot of people would probably disagree with me on this point, but that is what I think. Moving on to Kadir. I feel so bad for Kadir. I loved Kadir. Kadir Cookie. Kadir. I honestly wanna put on Netflix, even though I don't watch movies that often. Get like a nice blanket, wrap Kadir in the blanket and give him a never-ending hug and go, today we're just sitting here and we're watching TV, okay? We're letting our brains potato because you really, really need it. Effectively, Kadir is a Toreador, which surprised me, which is working as the current sheriff, which includes executing people. And he has internalized executing people to such a point where whenever he gives any kind of monologue, it sounds like it's like the Dark Knight from Final Fantasy or World of Warcraft talking. It's the edgiest of the edgiest emo things, and it's so precious. It is so precious. I loved how this character is written. I really did. Finally, from main storyline, characters that were important to me, and I liked how they were written, is Torque. I was told that this changed the other game, but I haven't played the other game. I'm only reviewing Coteries of New York right now. Torque is the kind of anarch baron that I could stand behind, mostly because he shows you that he's vulnerable. He tells you about the Second Inquisition, he says he fears for his own life. Well, he also does a bit of gambling, and he's calm, and he's caring. He took in his grandchild after his child got killed. He's running, like, close quarters little group of anarchs, and he seems like a warm and trustworthy vampire, and I know that that is not a thing, but I liked Torque in this game. I liked that Torque had some sort of vulnerability. I liked that he had more than one side to his character. I feel like it portrays a slightly humane vampire Vel. That is main storyline, main characters. That is all that I wanted to say about that. I am not gonna elaborate on any more points. If you're still listening, you probably have already played the game either way, as I told you to switch off if you didn't. Let's move on to companions and companion stories. My favorite one being Agathon, and it's not because he has a very strong story. Quite the opposite, it's because his story is weak. I like Agathon because his story is weak. Agathon portrays the kind of kindred that I would actually assume to get. I wouldn't assume that everybody's like going on this batshit crazy quest for whatever. That everybody is going on like a suicide mission or solving like a major crime spree. I would assume that their unlives are kind of mundane, and Agathon's unlife is kind of mundane. He has been given a strong thing to do by his regent and by his sire, because his regent and his sire is one and the same person. And she actually has quite a bit of backstory. When I read about her on Wiki, which I was surprised about, it's Aisling. So once again, props for the team for including, you know, important backstory kindred stuff. Yeah, and he's on a timer. He's stressed about it. He needs to get back research papers that his ex-Tremere girlfriend stole. Because she is running away from the pyramid, she is joining the Anarchs, and she stole their research, and she took it with her. That is his story, and the story is fairly mundane. At one point, He thinks that his grandma is in trouble, his human grandma, because he still has one. So he goes and checks up on her, but no, his creepy ex-girlfriend did break into her house. But it was more of a "stop following me" sort of thing, rather than she wouldn't actually touch his grandma because she isn't that mean. And he kind of comes off as being a bit on a spectrum, which he probably is. I don't want to like sound offensive or anything because his behavior, it's slightly outlandish, but it also could just be bookworm Tremere thing. Effectively, he doesn't speak all that much. When he did speak, he seemed to be fairly weird. He asked you why him? Why are you recruiting him for the coterie? It's like he doesn't have much self-esteem. And when he interacts with his ex-girlfriend is very, very passionate about everything. Well, it's almost like he had no emotion for her, where she had all the emotion for him, and he might have just been going on with that love thing in order to either further his position or as a fun little experiment. He's so focused on those research notes. He doesn't actually see her as a person, and it drives her absolutely crazy. It does, because she's like, you know, come with me, join the Anarch movement, and he's just like, research notes! To me, his behavior seemed like someone that's not entirely okay with normal social norms, so it makes me think that it's just something that he had as a human that he brought on. I am not necessarily perfect with social norms myself. I call myself a sensitive person, but yeah. So I can sort of understand that angle. I liked him as a character. He's a very sweet cookie. He's once again one of those cookies that I really want to wrap in the blanket, and that's okay. Though this one probably wouldn't understand and would probably be kind of weirded out if I ever touched them. So maybe not, especially considering that Tremeres really ward themselves. Might actually be not a good idea now that I think about it. Moving on to our other possible coterie recruit, which is D'Angelo. And I really liked him as a character. I didn't necessarily like his storyline, but I liked him as a character because he is just the sweetest. Nosferatus tend to have a very big humane heart, and you can see that because everybody treats them fairly badly. He is just the sweetest. After the embrace, he was a journalist. He wrote books. He decided to play a character. He decided to play a character that he has written before. That is his personality. D'Angelo wasn't who he was. It's who he chose to portray in his own life as a bit of escapism. Because he wasn't dealing with being embraced all that well. If you have him in your party, he has few special lines with Kaiser. Because Kaiser's like, you probably know why I saved this person, you know, you, speaking about you, the player. And he's like, yeah, and Kaiser's like, when they're out, we can compare our notes, because Nosferatus and stuff. And yes, Kaiser is an important story. Nosferatu, I didn't talk about him because I didn't have much to say. There are a lot of characters in this game. I'm skipping some because I don't have much to say about them. I liked D'Angelo. I didn't like his story. His story is that you're investigating murders, and it's murders that are being committed by a Thin Blood. And I am gonna assume that the Thin Blood was embraced by a Malkavian because she's not entirely there. Either that or she just could never accept what has happened to her. And she just mumbles things, and she writes things in blood like the gift of Cain or curse or whatever, and she doesn't have a single normal sentence. It's obvious that she is gone, and D'Angelo tries so hard to save her. And she's just completely and utterly gone. And another character writes into D'Angelo's storyline, which is Robert Larson. Robert Larson is a thin blood that has a primogen spot on the New York Council. I'm not shitting you. I have a true problem with that. Now, his angle from the D'Angelo storyline is that you can dig up dirt on him. That proves that when the Second Inquisition was sweeping New York, he was all like, you know, spare my life, I'm gonna sell somebody else out to you. So, you have two choices. Either you kill the murderous girl, because the two choices, you can't outright just go, you know, yep, we're gonna kill the murderous girl, because no, D'Angelo is trying to preserve the shit out of that murderous girl, and so is your character, even though I don't actually understand. She's not all there, she's committing all these murders, and even your character goes, it's not her fault that she's insane. No, it's not her fault that she's insane, Cookie, but she's committing all of these murders. Just let her get killed. I mean, she's not all there, she's not gonna get better. So you have two options where you try to preserve her, and you fail. Spoilers. Or you have the third option where you sell Robert Larson, and she lives, but he dies. Because you have some dirt on him, so you kinda deliver him to the council instead of her. And that choice is kinda disappointing, because you're very upset about what you did to Robert Larson's family, because he's still living with his mortal family, hasn't been embraced all that long ago. And you're like, we effectively took a father from a child. It's effectively what we did, because he still has a mortal kid. Hopefully it's not a damn fire. Hopefully he didn't produce his spawn after getting turned. Hopefully it was before. But effectively, the place where the girl dies, if you get to this option, is missing. Replaced with the place where he's all like, you essentially have killed me. Because, yeah, I'm not dying tonight, I'm gonna plead for my life, and the prince is gonna be like, yeah, you can live, and then she's just gonna dispose of me in secret afterwards. So that part is replaced, but you don't get to hear anything about the girl after that point. It's like she just, whoop, and disappeared off the storyline. It's just like, she's just like not there. And that was just very jarring. So there is an actual choice here as a player how you can influence the story, but it's very jarring how you do. Now let's go back to Robert Larson is a thin blood primogen. I had to rationalize that the only reason why Camarilla have not invaded New York and replaced its leadership is because they were probably expecting the Sabbat to go back to New York and overturn its leadership anyway, and they don't want that bloodbath on their hands. They don't want to fight Sabbat coming back from Middle East. Because the whole story is that Sabbat packed up and left at about early 2000s, and New York was one of their territories, so they packed up and they left, fight a war in the Middle East for a good 20 years. There was Camarilla presence in New York before that, but effectively that is when it really gets majorly shaken up. There's a new prince and everything. And there's a new council under this new prince. And all sorts of fucking, like, that's a fucking thing. That is a fucking thing. Thin bloods are supposed to be killed on sight. Vanhard was one of them in her council. The game goes, you know, the wiki goes, well, maybe it's her sense of humor, and it's like, it would kind of be like, you know, we have a government, here is a mass murderer. We normally put mass murderer in jail, but this time, as a joke, we put him as one of the counselors that get to make major decisions. Yes. So that really grated on my nerves. I had to try and rationalize this, because it really left me scratching my head. The hell is happening in New York, so I have to assume that the only reason why New York Camarilla are a thing is because the rest of the Camarilla were like, the Sabbat are gonna come back from the Middle East, and they're gonna have eaten all of the ancient people, and they're gonna be all powerful, and we don't actually want to fight them for their old territories, So we're just gonna, like, leave the old territories to the youngins. He can be ruffle-stumped when the Sabbat comes back, so it's just not our problem. It's just not our problem. That's how I'm rationalizing it. I like the fact that Robert Larson plays a major role inside the Angelo storyline, because otherwise I assumed that he was a Malkavian primogen. But no, he's a thin blood primogen, and the main storyline doesn't tell you this. The Angelo side storyline does. So this is one of these places where you can just, like, not pick up this information in your first playthrough and come back and have to have a second playthrough. Lastly, not lastly, third out of 4 possible recruitment options is Tamika. And Tamika is a gangrel child that was embraced about, I think it was like 10 years ago, together with her brother, and they both live inside this park, right? And there was a third gangrel, but the second Inquisition happened and she died. So yeah. And they're just alone there together. They're alone there together, and you try to recruit her, and she sees this... She wants you to help her, like, watch her back while she goes to the graveyard, effectively to just reminiscence about the third gangrel, because the third gangrel's family, like their real mortal family, actually bought them an empty grave. So she goes there to, have a sad sometimes, because they were important to her, and she sees this guy that's called Scarface, I think? He is a gangrel that completely lost themselves to the beast. Entirely. They're gone. There's not even a bit of them. They're just a beast, and that's what sometimes happens. That's why you don't either lose your path of enlightenment or all the humanity, because if you do, you go insane, and effectively you're... Sorry everybody, this is a very, very long review. My cats have decided to interrupt my recording. Effectively, upset yourself enough and your soul will check out and your body will be taken over by just a beast and will be kinda directed around places by that beast that's gonna just attack people for the most part. You don't want that to happen. You don't want that to ever happen. You don't want your soul to just check out like that. And that is what her story is about. So she sees the Scarface, which is effectively gangrel boogeyman. It's the stories that young gangrels get scared about. And he gets captured by Second Inquisition. She decides to go on a killing spree to get to him, to decide whether to execute him or not. Either choice is fine, because once again, there's no person in there anymore. It's just a wild beast, effectively, just carrying a body around. It's a nice thing to put them down at that point. That's not because they're gangrel, that's because their soul has checked out, right? And no matter how you play it, she loses her brother in that whole thing. And before that, she says to you that she has nobody. And you can be like, well, you have me, or you have your brother, and that sort of thing. And if you say that you have your brother, she will be like, well, not for forever, because eventually he's gonna leave me. Or you can be like, you have me, and then she will... she's almost romantically interested in you, really. And she loses her brother, the only person that she has had for like the last 10 years. She doesn't know a lot of people. Camarilla don't really respect gangrels anymore. Gangrels and Camarilla has had a fallen out. So, the only person that she really has had for 10 years, and your only option as a character is to say, get over it. Just get over it, and she's clearly distraught, and she's clearly having a hard time. Horrible time, and you're just like, yep, I'm just gonna go back to my haven and never check up on her ever again. And I feel so bad for her, because she is such a nice character, and no matter how you play it, you just do her dirty. And I don't understand what she did to deserve that. I really don't understand. Why, writers, why? Let's go to the last possible recruit, which is Hope. Hope is a Malkavian that has split personality that comes through her phone. She has split personality inside Twitter accounts. Now, her writing is actually pretty decent because Twitter account names are pretty funny. They are. She has gotten rich through Bitcoin, which I am jelly of, and she seems to have been romantically involved with another Malkavian woman that was having this major bot project on the internet. She convinced Camarilla that it's a good idea to have bots that you can just flood and influence internet however you want. So she was on this major bot project and she really needed Hope at the helm of it all because Hope is very experienced with computers and Hope is good at this kind of thing because she has multiple Twitter personalities either way. And I was pretty on board with Hope up until the last mission. I have checked. There's no way of doing it differently. The mission before the last mission, you go and do a meeting with this Hope's former Malkavian lover, right? And you try to get her to say as many words as possible in order for Hope to tune her voice recognition software that is recording her voice so that she can make her voice say anything in order to get past her security, right? I did that one perfectly the second time around. But you still lack enough letters. You lack the letter T specifically, so T's come out all wrong, meaning that the security system goes off in the last mission no matter what you do. Can't avoid that. When security system goes off, her former Malkavian lever shows up and Hope has destroyed all of her backups of the project that she's been working on for years, and she's distraught, and she's like, I'm gonna diablerize you. I'm gonna diablerize you to recover the information that I need to finish my project. And at that point, no matter what you're gonna do, you're still gonna end up helping Hope. You can't fail that. You can't fail that whatsoever. And at that point, Hope goes, I'm gonna eat her instead. And your character goes, okay, and walks out. And you can't influence that whatsoever, and it pissed me off so much because I would have rather Hope died, or I would have rather been like, yeah, you Diablerist, I don't actually want you on my team. I don't give a shit about what you do with the rest of your life. Or at the very least, if I took a stand right there and go, I'm not gonna let you Diablerize this person. Diablery is a really bad idea. Diablery is a very bad idea, Hope. Stop it. But no, you have absolutely no choice, so she ends up eating her former lover, and I don't feel comfortable about that whatsoever, and yes, it illustrates the beast absolutely perfectly, but god damn game, I feel like that's someplace where I should have had choice, and I had absolutely none, and that peeves me. So Hope character in general peeves me, even though her Twitter handle writing is actually pretty cool. Moving on to minor stories, I only have one person in here, and it's Benoit. There's like 3 minor stories, and Benoit is Sophie's child. You can just never figure that information out unless you ask the right questions, and he's a bit pissed off with his sire, for she embraced him and left him like Toreadors do. It was like, oh, well, you're interesting. For 2 days, and I lost interest. Goodbye now. Perfect portrayal of what Toreadors are like, and he's kind of jelly because you are Sophie's protege and she's spending all the time with you, and she spent none of the time with him despite the fact that he's her childer. Anyway, Benoit is having a faith crisis. And I hated the storyline because every single thing that I would have said as a person to Benoit is just not available. That is just a limitation with the choice system in a visual novel that tries to deal with very, very serious topics, you know, religion. Effectively, anything, at no point could I ever say anything to Benoit that I would have actually liked to say? Outside of maybe the last bit where I'm like, execute Benoit to Sophie. Because effectively, Benoit goes, priest hurt. which is proof of God. I am gonna organize a meeting with a priest in his house. And I'm gonna tell you to hug the priest. To prove that you accept the God's burning love. What? He believes that he deserves to be burned. In my character, you can choose to run away. I chose that my character actually picks up a lamb and tries to kill the priest, which he absolutely fails at. Benoit loses his shit, then he gets away. Then he goes to Sophie and goes, oh, and by the way, Benoit's kind of like exposing this whole vampire thing to a priest because he's been a bit kooky. That's Benoit summed up. I found his storyline to just be absolutely annoying, and at the last bit, it went off the rails to such a point that my Twitch chat was like, we're so off the rails that we're actually on the highway. It was definitely interesting, it was definitely something else, but because of the limitations of visual novel and only having 3 choices for each language bit, I feel like it is an irritating story that it makes. Because it's trying to deal with a very serious topic that I can't pick the answers that I would normally give. And that has been my review of Vampire the Masquerade Coteries of New York. You already know my overall score for this, for I have disclosed it about 40 minutes prior. The rest of this has just been a rant. So thank you for watching. Thank you for still being here. I hope you liked this review, and see you the next time. Toodaloo.